The Miami Dolphins have announced that Tua Tagovailoa, the quarterback that they took in the 2021 NFL draft, one pick, if you remember, before the Los Angeles Chargers took Justin Herbert, the Dolphins have announced that Tua is going to get the start in week number 6 in London against the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Dolphins had Tua start in week 1, and then he got injured in the second game of the season in the first half against the Buffalo Bills. And unfortunately, the Dolphins have not been able to win a game with Jacoby Brissett under center. And I think this situation is so fascinating because it is just a different world we are living in the NFL right now in 2021 compared to years we've seen in the past, and in terms of how long teams are willing to wait and really see if the franchise quarterback they drafted is the answer or not. The first real example we saw of this was a couple of years ago when Cliff Kingsbury first got the Arizona Cardinals job. If you remember, the year before, Steve Keim, right, the same general manager that drafted Josh Rosen in the top 15 in the first round at quarterback for the Arizona Cardinals, they were so bad that year that they decided to move on from Josh Rosen after 1 year, and they took Kyler Murray with the number 1 overall pick. And I think we could all agree so far that decision has worked out well for the Arizona Cardinals. And I give Steve Keim credit because he realized that a move he made just 1 year earlier was a mistake that he needed to correct if he wanted the Arizona Cardinals to be on top of the NFL sooner rather than later. And of course, Arizona's on top of the NFL right now with the 5-0 record, but they haven't won anything. It's only been 2 years, but I could already tell you that Kyler Murray has turned out to become a better player than Josh Rosen really ever would. And it's so interesting because for the Dolphins, when it comes to the selection of Tua over Justin Herbert, a lot of people will criticize the Dolphins and say, how did you not take Justin Herbert over Tua? But then there will be other people that will say, we all knew or at least thought that Tua Tagovailoa was the pick at number 6 overall for Miami. We watched a lot of Tua Tagovailoa at Alabama, and most people, the consensus opinion, agreed with Chris Grier, the general manager of the Miami Dolphins, for them to take Tua with the number 6 pick in 2020. And I get it. We all saw Tua play at Alabama. We all saw Justin Herbert play at Oregon, and I had plenty of concerns about Justin Herbert coming out. He had some Kirk Cousins vibes to me in the sense that before his last game, that big Rose Bowl win against Wisconsin, he had never really shown up for a big game. You guys remember that same season? Oregon was up big against Auburn week 1 and then fell apart in the end and lost. Don't you guys remember when Oregon easily could have made the playoff with Justin Herbert as their quarterback, and then they lost to Arizona State and Herm Edwards and a freshman quarterback, Jalen Daniels, who's still in school? Like, that Oregon team with Herbert could have been really good and really dangerous if they won one of those 2 games, and still they weren't able to do that. They weren't able to make the playoff. But then later in that year, Oregon had a big win against Utah in the Pac-12 championship game. They beat Wisconsin in the Rose Bowl, and Justin Herbert looked really good in both of those games, but still, they wanted Tua Tagovailoa. Everyone else wanted Tua, and that's fine. Here's the difference, though. We are fans. We watch these players in college. We watch them once a week, but we are not NFL draft evaluators. Our job is not to determine which quarterback is going to be the best. That's Chris Grier's job, and he got the decision wrong. And I think what the Dolphins have learned so far since they've taken Tua, it's ironic because even though they drafted Tua, they had a really decent team around him. And when I say decent, you look at their team on paper and what they were able to do last year. There weren't many superstars, there weren't many great names. And I think the unfortunate thing is the reason why I was so high on Miami coming into the season was because last year, their roster, once again, wasn't great on paper. They didn't have star-studded names, and they were still able to find a way to win football games. I assumed that going into this season, with a somewhat healthy Tua. Obviously, he's healthy now, but he missed the last 3 games. With improvements in weapons in Waddle and Fuller, and it's unfortunate Fuller has not been able to stay on the field. That signing has not gotten off to a great start for Miami. But I thought they got some guys on both sides of the ball that would help improve their team, and so far it hasn't done that. But with Tua back in the mix, I think this situation is so interesting because the pressure is now on him. We could all agree the Dolphins have an owner in Stephen Ross that wants to win now. He wants to win right away. The people of Miami have been desperate for the past 20 years to find the next Dan Marino. They've been looking for their guy for a while now, and Dolphin fans, understandably so, are frustrated that it looks like they could have had that guy in Justin Herbert, who is tearing up the NFL right now, looking like not only one of the best young quarterbacks in the league, but looking like one of the best quarterbacks in the league, period, and they drafted Tua over him. And by the way, it's just interesting that in the NFL, Tua, he hasn't looked great. I totally understand that. There have been times when he's been on the NFL field and I've been watching and I've just said to myself, wow, this guy looks small. I don't know if this guy is going to be the answer for Miami at quarterback. And even with that being said, he's still been able to win football games, you know? Tua finished with a record of 6-3 last year. In the one game he started and finished this year, he won. But the problem is he hasn't really been popping. He hasn't really been able to make the big-time throws like he was able to make at Alabama, like we've seen guys like Justin Herbert make. And that's the problem for Miami, is right now without him, your team is so bad. And to be honest, I don't even know with the current shape of the Miami Dolphins if Tua is even in a good position to succeed. Like, that offensive line is an absolute disaster. Jesse Davis at left tackle. Did you guys see the hit that Tua took that got him injured against the Buffalo Bills? It was literally on a 4th down play. A defensive end for Buffalo came untouched. He wasn't even touched. Tua barely had any time to get rid of the ball, and he just got abused on a sack on that 4th down play, and we haven't seen him since. He's now going to play in London against the Jacksonville Jaguars. And I'll start off by saying this. Tua needs to win this game against the Jaguars. He really does have to. And I get it. Trevor Lawrence right now, I guess you could say, does look like the better quarterback. Lawrence hasn't been great to start off his NFL career, but at least he's flashed and have made a couple of really nice high-level throws where it's like, wow, that was impressive. And obviously, speaking of situations, Trevor Lawrence is not in the best situation in Jacksonville right now based on Urban Meyer and everything that has gone on that end of the spectrum. But hey, Tua is in a situation now in Miami where, okay, he has some talent around him, and maybe him being inserted back into the lineup could provide this Dolphins team with a spark. But the crazy thing is this, and this is the bottom line, is if Tua doesn't play well for the rest of the season, there's a very good chance the Miami Dolphins are going to make a change at quarterback. And look, Tua, it's hard to evaluate what he's done this season just because he hasn't really played that much. And that's why these games are so important. Last year, the Dolphins were a really good team with Tua, without Tua. I loved the way Brian Flores handled the quarterback situation last year, and I'm willing to die on that stone. It may be an uncommon opinion, but Brian Flores was starting Tua. Now that time goes on, we start to realize that all of a sudden, when the Dolphins announced that Tua was going to be the starting quarterback, I believe it was like week 8, week 9 last year, it came as a surprise to many because Ryan Fitzpatrick was actually winning games and getting the job done. But it was clear that Stephen Ross, the owner, just wanted to see what the young kid was able to do, and Brian Flores had to go by that. But as time went on, late in certain game situations, Flores realized, like, look, the only realistic chance we have to win this game is if Ryan Fitzpatrick is under center, the style he played with. Also, last year, it was clear Tua was recovering from that hip surgery. He clearly wasn't 100% healthy and ready to go for Miami, and I think it cost him. The lack of weapons cost him. The fact that Brian Flores last year, when Tua was in the game, he really didn't throw the ball more than 10 yards. Flores didn't ask him to do that. And then right away, when Fitzpatrick comes in, Fitz was able to just sling the ball down the field. It seemed to me last year the Dolphins were just using a different offense with Tua under center, and I want to see him be a little bit more aggressive. And I know that's crazy to say in the year 2021, and the fact that Tua in 2021 isn't really looking like the same guy he was at Alabama. At Bama, I get his weapons were great, but he was able to throw a really pretty football that was able to win games for Alabama. And I get it. The Dolphins' weapons in NFL context are nowhere close to those Alabama weapons he had. But I do like some of the weapons Miami brought in this year to help improve their team. From a guy like Jalen Waddle at Alabama, who is a really good player. You have Mike Gesicki. They even brought in Malcolm Brown from the Rams, a decent running back. Myles Gaskin. Like, you have Devontae Parker is still there. Like, he has a better group of weapons around him this year than he does last year. Hopefully we will see Will Fuller back sooner rather than later. But it's just crazy because for a quarterback that has only played in a handful of games and has won a lot of them, like he's only played in 10 career games and he's won 7 of them, there's a lot of pressure on him because the Dolphins, it seems to me, they are trying to find their next Dan Marino. It seems to me that Stephen Ross, their owner, wants Deshaun Watson, and that is a huge risk. I think really the reason why Miami hasn't traded for him yet is because of everything that has been going on with him off the field. Keep in mind, the reason why Deshaun Watson isn't playing football right now is not because the NFL has suspended him. It's because he has voluntarily said, like, I'm done with the Houston Texans. I'm never playing a game for them again. The only reason he reported to Texans camp was so he wouldn't get fined. And the Texans, they want to trade him, but at the same time, they want to trade him for an appropriate return. They believe, and of course, rightfully so, that when he's good, Deshaun Watson is worth, 3 first-round picks. And I just don't think a team, even like Miami, would be willing to give that up based on the unknowns around Deshaun Watson. There is a chance by the time all of these investigations are over and done with that Deshaun Watson could be in jail and he may never play football again. Like, we don't know. I'm curious to see if the Dolphins feel like after the season Tua just isn't the answer. Would they be willing to take that risk for Deshaun? Because really, even though it looks like Tua does have till the end of the season, really it just seems like that the Dolphins, they'd be willing to move on from Tua, but they would just have to know if they're getting Deshaun Watson, what exactly the deal is, how long his suspension is going to be, and the NFL can't really do anything until all of the details of his legal issues are taken care of. So there's a lot of pressure on Tua. If he doesn't do well in these next couple games to end this season, there's a good chance he is not going to be under center for the Miami Dolphins next year. And it's just crazy, the NFL universe we live in right now, where teams have said to themselves, look, if we realize right away, whether it's a year in, whether it's 2 years in, that the guy we drafted is not the answer and we made a mistake, we have to correct it sooner rather than later if we want to end up winning and fulfilling our ultimate goal. I also found it interesting that Miami, they had the number 3 pick last year, right? They could have drafted a guy like Trey Lance or Mac Jones or even a Justin Fields, and they decided to stick with Tua when they could have had really any of those guys. Maybe they could have made a trade, 1 pick up for Zach Wilson. Who knows? I know the Jets loved him, but Miami had all the assets. They could have traded, really anything, and they stick with Tua Tagovailoa. I'm going to be curious to see if it cost them or not.